little, thank you very much, Avril. Let's just give Art a little welcome, first of all. Welcome to the shiur. I want to just explain how we do our shiur. We are, I think it's true to say, not Daf Hayomi. Okay? We are not Daf Hayomi because we have been going, actually, I think, I'm not mistaken, I think this week is our 4th anniversary. I think we began in the first week in November 2019. So this is our 4th anniversary. We've been learning weekly, almost without break, for 4 years. And we have done the grand total of 16 pages in 4 years. We are on Daf Yud Zayin of Sanhedrin. So it is not Daf Hayomi. We are very analytical. We are very slow. We go into things in a great deal of detail. Some people have described it as analytic. Other people have described it as anal. But either way, it's extremely slow. And that's the style that we do. So
in California, we do that. We call it almost Daf, almost Yomi.
Right. So
same thing.
That's the way we do things, and you enter actually, and at a good point, because we're about to start a new little sugya. I'm going to put the Gemarah on the screen straight away. Those of you who have got your Steinsaltz Gemarahs, Johnny is not with us today because he's off somewhere else, but he'll be back later. But Michael's got his Koren Steinsaltz. It's on page 92. If you're in an art scroll, it's Yud Zayin, right at the bottom of Amud Aleph. And I am going to share the screen for you now. There you go. There we are. The screen is the Steinsaltz Gemarah, because it's a nice, easy screen to see. As you will see, there's a little symbol here, which looks like a bit of an S. That tells us that that is a new little subject within a subject. And this is where we finished off last time. We had just spent a few weeks going through the concept of how a unanimous Sanhedrin, what I mean by that is somebody who is convicted by a majority of 71-0 in the Sanhedrin, that person walks free, which is extremely counterintuitive. We spent 2 or 3 weeks going through that subject. If you're interested, you can go back into the recordings. Every one of these shiurim is recorded, and they are available on the YouTube channel for free. You can go and have a look at that if you're interested. But we finished that last week, and what we're now going to say on the back of that, on the back of the idea that there was a Sanhedrin that was considered that it didn't work because it was unanimous, Rabbi Yochanan is now going to tell us various different things that a judge is required to have in order to sit on a Sanhedrin. And we'll start over here. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein moshivin b'Sanhedrin. You cannot sit on the Sanhedrin. In other words, you cannot be appointed as a judge on the Sanhedrin. Ela ba'alei koma. Ela ba'alei koma. Now, all of you who live in any kind of house or building other than a bungalow will know what a koma is. What is a koma? Yes, April?
A floor.
A floor, that's right. So, for instance, Jeffrey lives on Koma Arba. Jeffrey lives on the 4th floor, etc. Now, what does that mean? You can't be a Sanhedrin member unless you are Ba'alei Koma. Ba'al, you know what Ba'al means? That means the owner of. The owner of a floor. What does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that. It means somebody who is Koma. A Koma is a floor because it is high, right? The 4th floor is higher than the 3rd floor, which is higher than the 2nd floor. Koma means height. So a Baal Koma means a tall person. Somebody who is tall is called Ba'alei Koma. So Rabbi Yochanan says you cannot be a member of the Sanhedrin unless you are tall. All right, I'm going to ask you why not in a minute, obviously, but let's just see what the other criteria that Rabbi Yochanan requires in order for you to be a judge. So first of all, you have to be tall. What else? Uba'alei chokhmah. Well, that's fairly obvious. You have to be somebody who has Ba'al, meaning the owner of. Ba'alei means the owner of. You have to be the owner of chokhmah, wisdom. So you have to be wise. Well, that one's fairly obvious why you have to be wise. What about the next one? Uba'alei mar'eh. Ba'alei mar'eh. What does mar'eh mean? What's the root of the word mar'eh? Avril, you're muted. I can't quite read your lips.
Is it bitter? Mar?
No.
No.
It's the other bit of the word. What's the root of the word mar'eh? Anyone?
Does it come from the word to see?
It does
Wow.
come from the word to see, Julia. Exactly. Mar'eh means appearance. Where do we have that in our Yom Kippur davening? I won't sing it to you because of my lousy singing voice.
The high priest.
The high priest, Ma'arei Cohen, or as my father used to say, Mary Cohen, his favorite song, all about Mary Cohen. Ma'arei Cohen, Kohen, the appearance of the Kohen Gadol. And that song is all about Ma Nedar, how wonderful it is. Ma Yafeh, how beautiful it is. Or it was Ma'arei Kohen, the appearance of the Kohen Gadol, when he came out of the Beit HaMikdash, when he came out of the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, having atoned for the sins of the people, he had this radiant appearance. He had this beautiful appearance. Ma Nedar, Ma'arei Kohen. How beautiful was the appearance of the Kohen. That's what that song is all about. So Mar'eh means appearance. So somebody who is Ba'alei Mar'eh is somebody who is good looking. So you have to be, so far, Rabbi Yochanan wants you to be tall, wise, good looking, Ba'alei zikna. What's zikna? It's the root of that word. Yes, Julia, unmute and tell us.
Well, I didn't find the word. Was it zachan, which is old?
Zakain, old, correct. You have to be old. Now, you can't be so old that you've lost the plot, but they want you to be mature. Rabbi Yochanan says you can't be a judge unless you are Ba'al Zikna. You are a person who is of an older age. It comes from the word Zakain. The Zakainim, who are the Zakainim? The elders. We have that. We use that expression in English, don't we? If you're an elderman of the shul, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean that you're old. It means that you are old and wise. You're a person who is thought to be somebody to whom you would go for advice. The eldermen of a society are the people who uphold the values and the traditions of that society. So the Zikanim were the elders, the Shivim Zikanim. Of course, the whole business here about Sanhedrin. Why have we got 71 members of the Sanhedrin? We've learnt this a few months ago. Why are there 71 members of the Sanhedrin in the first place? Where do we get that 71 from, Julia?
Well, it was somewhere in the Torah, and there was definitely 70 people plus one, and they had lots.
Okay, very good.
It all came
correct.
From,
Now, who was the plus one?
Well, the first one was Moshe.
That's right. And who were the 70?
Oh, they were the people.
They were the 70 elders, the Shivim Zekanim, the 70 elders who were appointed when Moshe Rabbeinu said to God, I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this lot. That was when they wanted meat. If you remember, this was the debacle with the Slav, the quail. Okay, they said, give us meat. We're sick of this mon stuff that tastes of honey and wafers. Despite the fact that the Midrash says it tasted whatever you wanted it to taste of, it didn't. The people said, we want meat. And Moshe says, where am I going to get meat from for 600,000 people? And God says, okay, I'll give you helpers. Bring me 70 elders and we'll make them into your assistants. And that is where we get the Sanhedrin from. Shivim Zikenim plus Moshe is 71. So you have to be a Baal Zikna. You have to be an older person in the idea of an elderman, the idea that you are somebody who is worthy to be considered to be an elderman. Now, the next one's really interesting. What else have you got to do in order to be in the Sanhedrin? You have to be Ba'alei Kshafim. What's that, Michael? Michael's got a big grin on his face. Tell us what it is, Michael. What are Ba'alei Kshafim?
I don't know. Just smiling because I was reading the English.
Yeah. So the English says.
Magician?
The English says you must be masters of sorcery. Kshafim is witchcraft. That's another one of my father's Zichroni Livracha favorite expressions. Machshefa. What's a machshefa? Jeffrey, what's a machshefa?
I can't translate it.
It's a witch. A machshefa is a witch. A machshefa is a witch. Okay, we have it in the Torah itself. We have it in the Torah itself. Let me show you. Let me show you where we have it in the Torah. The word machshefa. Although we don't actually pronounce it like that. That's the Yiddish expression for it. I'm going to ask. Where is it? No, it's not there. Hang on a minute. It's in Mishpatim. Hang on a second. There we go. Found it. I'm going to ask David Marks to tell us where we have the word machshefa in the Torah.
Machshefa lo techayeh.
Correct. Machshefa lo techayeh. There it is for you on the screen. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. A witch. What did you have to do to them? You had to burn them. Right? You had to burn them. Now, machshefa has become an expression used in Yiddish to mean not a very nice woman. So, you know, if you saw your friend and he was married to somebody who wasn't very nice, you'd say his wife's a right machshefa.
Isn't it also used to describe the mother-in-law?
Yes, often used to describe the mother-in-law. That is true. Let's not go there, though.
I was also going to say, sorry, before you got onto that it's a bit contradictory, isn't it? Because you can't allow a sorceress to live, but the judges, who of course are men, have to be masters of sorcery.
Absolutely.
So,
you are absolutely right. And not only that, Julia, it gets worse because there is a pasuk in Parshat Shoftim in Dvarim, chapter 18, which tells us very clearly that anybody that gets involved in all this sorcery nonsense is to be got rid of. Let me show you. There it is on the screen for you now. Verse, Jeffrey, read it for us, please. Verse 9 through to 12.
When ye have come to the land the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to do like the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone who passes his son or daughter through fire, a soothsayer, a diviner of auspicious times, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer.
Stop there for a sec, Jeff. Stop there. Have a look at this word there, a sorcerer. I've highlighted it for you. Umechashef. That is the male version of a machshefa, is a mechashef. Okay, so you're quite right, Julia. The Torah tells us very explicitly. Verse 11, Jeffrey, carry on.
Or a charmer, a python sorcerer, a yidao sorcerer, or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord, and because of these abominations, the Lord your God is driving them out from before you.
So there you go, Julia. You're quite right. Thank you, Jeffrey. You're quite right, Julia, to point out what on earth is going on here with our Gemarah. The Gemarah says that in order to be a member of the Sanhedrin, you have to be somebody who knows witchcraft. Now, that begs the question, first of all, before we even get to Julia's question, that begs the question is, what is witchcraft? Is it real? Is it sleight of hand? What is it? Does the Torah believe in witchcraft? Does the Torah believe in all these things, these soothsayers and diviner of auspicious times and all that stuff? Seems that there may well be an argument to say that the Torah does believe in this kind of stuff. Where is the first time we come across this idea of magic and sorcery in the Torah?
In Egypt with Moshe and the plagues.
Very good, Jeffrey. Very good. There we are. Parshat Va'era, verse 11 for us, Jeffrey, on the screen, please.
Then Pharaoh too summoned the wise men and the magicians and the necromancers of Egypt. Also did likewise with their magic.
Okay, stop there. Have a look at this word here. Ve'lamachashfim. Ve'lamachashfim. Same word, isn't it? Machshefa. Machashef. Same word. So, yes, Jeffrey is quite right. The Torah seems to speak about Egyptian magicians, and it doesn't say that they did tricks. It says Vayasu Gamheim, and they also did it. What did they do? Well, they did exactly what Moshe and Aaron had done in the previous pasuk. Read the previous pasuk for us, Jeffrey, verse 10.
Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh, and they did so as the Lord had commanded. Aaron cast his staff before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent.
So that was a bit of a miracle that Hashem had shown Moshe and Aaron what to do, and they did it. But it seems from verse 11 that the magicians could do it as well. Vayasu gamheim. There doesn't seem to be any equivocation there that they did any kind of tricks or what have you. So at this point, we would have to say that the Torah does indicate, at least, that this stuff is real. Now, we have the psukim that I just showed you over here, that the Torah says we are not allowed to do it. Why are we not allowed to do it? Verse 9, Jeffrey, on the screen.
When you have come to the land the Lord your God is giving you, you shall not learn to do like the abominations of those nations.
There we go. We're not allowed to do it because it's considered an abomination of the Goyim. Doesn't say it's not real. So again, this indicates that the Torah seems to have an impression, or give us an impression, that these things are real. Now, have a look at verse 14 on the screen, Jeffrey. It's a few verses later.
For these nations which you are to possess hearken to diviners of auspicious times and soothsayers. But as for you, the Lord your God has not given you things like these.
Stop that. Stop there. So the Torah says these nations, ki hagoyim ha'ela, these nations, meaning Canaan, all those 7 nations that we were going to come in and destroy and overtake when we conquered the land under Yoshua bin Nun, they listened to all these magicians and what have you. But as for you, the Lord your God has not given you things like these. Implication that he has given them to the Goyim. So the Goyim have got magicians. and soothsayers and all the other stuff. But we are not allowed to listen to them. What we've got to do is verse 15, Jeffrey.
Prophet from among you, from your brothers like me, the Lord your God will set up for you. You shall hearken to him.
So this is Moshe saying, never mind all that rubbish that those goyim are doing, all that magic stuff. You will only listen to the Navi Hashem. And how will you know that he is a Navi Hashem? Because he will be kamoni. He will be like me, says Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay? Even though we say, Lo kamba Yisrael k'Moshe od Navi, there was never arisen another prophet like Moshe. Moshe, of course, was very humble, and he said, there'll be plenty of other prophets like me. That's who you listen to. You don't listen to all that rubbish. But he doesn't say it's nonsense, which is very interesting. Now, what about the Rishonim? What about the first early commentators? Now, the two most famous commentators who speak about the idea of witchcraft and all that kind of stuff that we're talking about now are the two Rams. Who do I mean by the two Rams, do you think? Yes? Go on, Julia.
Rambam and Ramban.
Yes, correct. The two Rams. Rambam, Maimonides, and Ramban, Nachmanides. Now, who would like to guess which side of the coin each of those famous Rams take in this argument? Rambam Maimonides versus Ramban Nachmanides. Rambam, of course, lived in Spain and then Egypt. Ramban lived in Spain, Cordoza, a little bit later than the Rambam. Who says what? Have a guess. You got a 50-50 chance. No one wants to put their neck on the block. Okay, well, what if I was to tell you that Rambam, the Maimonides, is known as the super rationalist Jew? Okay, the rationalist Jew always follows the Rambam. If you read Moreh Nevuchim, Guide for the Perplexed, Rambam was the one who was very much of this world. He was very influenced to a degree by Aristotle, and he is the rationalist's friend. Now, would you like to guess which side they are on?
Well, Rambam does not believe in witchcraft.
Yes, you're quite right. Well done. Rambam does not believe in witchcraft, and I shall show you. Rambam, here is on the screen for you, is Sefaria. By the way, if you ever want to look at anything up in many Sfarim, the Sefaria website is absolutely brilliant. If you want to support it, you can donate to it as well. It's free to use. It's a bit like Wikipedia, only better and Jewish. And here, this is Mishnah Torah, one of the magna opa of the Rambam, Mishnah Torah, and this is Hilchot Avodah Zarah v'chukot hagoyim. This is his section on the laws of idol worship and chukot hagoyim. What's chukot hagoyim refer to?
Well, it's forbidden to follow the evil ways of our neighbors.
Yeah, chukat hagoy is the way that the non-Jews behave. So their practices, so in other words, something can be a benign act, but if the goyim do it, then we're told not to do it. Now, that has been interpreted, reinterpreted, and misinterpreted over the generations in numerous times. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine. But what it originally meant was specifically the practices of the Canaanites and all the other 6 other nations of the time when we went into Eretz Israel. It says there, Al Telech b'chukat hagoy. do not follow the practices, literally do not walk in the statutes of the nations. Originally, the Torah referred to those 7 nations. Over the generations, it has been, in my view, incorrectly bastardized to include anything that any goy does. You should do the opposite, which is why you find, for example, that certain groups of people amongst us will button their shirts and coats up on the opposite side. We Westerners, men at least, have their shirt buttons left over right. Jeffrey knows exactly what I'm going to say now. He's already smiling about it. He's read my mind. Okay? Because there are certain groups of people who button their coats right over left. Okay? Long black coats right over left. And why do they button them right over left? Because the goyim button theirs left over right. Right? So therefore, because they do it left over right, that's chukas hagoy. So we have to do it right over left. And in fact, in certain circles, that particular group of people who do that are known as the right over left boys, because they button their coats up right over left. Jeffrey is laughing and smiling because my father and his uncle used to use that expression very commonly. It wasn't used particularly in a pleasant context, really. But there you go. Yes, Jeffrey.
He'd be stoned today if he was to use it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be politically correct, would it? Anyway, that chukas hagoy. So let's go back to, I digress. Now, Art, you can see why we don't get very far in this shiur, because I keep going off at tangents like that. But there you are. Mishnah Torah Hilchot Avodah Zarah v'Chukot HaGoyim. The Rambam says like this. He's talking about the pasuk that we quoted before. Do not allow a witch to live. Machshefa lo techayeh. And he says here, I'll just show you the English rather than the Hebrew as well. All of the above matters are falsehood. This is the Rambam. All the above matters are falsehood and lies with which the original idolaters deceived the Gentile nations in order to lead them after them. In other words, it was never, ever anything other than deception. Okay? Funnily enough, I read just yesterday, and I can't remember the guy's name now. Apparently, some very famous magician, American magician, died this week. Anybody read about that? I can't remember the guy's name now. Huh?
His obituary was in the Times.
I saw it. I can't remember his name now.
He was Jewish. I think, is it
David Berglas?
That's it. Anyway, he died this week, apparently. And the obituary that I read, I had no idea where I saw it. I think it might have been when I was looking for something else, and you end up reading. You end up with, in 3 clicks, you can be from the Gemara to why camels, have 2 humps or something. So anyway, this fellow died, and in his obituary it said that he took his tricks, or whatever it was, his magic, to the grave with him. He never told anybody how he did the stuff right up until his death. The Rambam is telling us, don't be deceived. It's deception. It's all sleight of hand. It's not real. It's deception. Let's have a look at the Hebrew word that he used. The very interesting word here. You will recognize this word. Udvarim ha'elu. These things, he says, kulan divrei sheker. What is sheker?
Lies.
Lies. It's lies. It's all lies, he says. The chazav is another way, another deceit. Chazav is deceit. It's the opposite of emet. Okay, so he says they're all falsehood and lies, which the original idolaters deceive the Gentile nations in order to lead them after them. It is not fitting for the Jews, who are wise sages, to be drawn into such emptiness, nor to consider that they have any value. Okay, nothing. They're valueless. It's rubbish. it might be clever and it might be tricky and sleight of hand and all that, and we all love to know how they do these tricks, but it's tricks. It's rubbish, says the Rambam. And he goes on to say like this: whoever believes in occult arts of this nature and in his heart thinks that they are true and words of wisdom, but are forbidden by the Torah, is foolish and feeble-minded. I'm not going to read you the next sentence just yet. Julia, don't read it. Avril, don't read it. We'll come back to it in a second. So he says, there are those, and the Ramban is one of them, there are those that believe, yes, it's forbidden by the Torah, but actually it's got some truth to it. We're not allowed to do it, but we've got some truth to it. Rambam says, no, if you think that, you're foolish and you're feeble-minded, and you're to be considered like women and children who have underdeveloped intellects. Ooh, ouch.
Sounds like
Okay.
Ramban.
Say that again, Art.
It sounds like Ramban.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you that
Not
Rambam, as well as
PC. He's not PC.
yeah, I forgot to tell you, as well as being rationalist, he's also misogynist. But anyway, that's another story. He goes to say, the masters of wisdom and those of perfect knowledge know with clear proof that all these crafts that the Torah forbade are not reflections of wisdom, but rather emptiness and vanity, which attracted the feeble-minded and caused them to abandon all the paths of truth. For these reasons, when the Torah warned against all these empty matters, it advised, be of perfect faith with your God, your Lord, which is exactly the pasuk, the next pasuk, which we had here. There it is, verse 13 on the screen, Jeffrey.
Be wholehearted with the Lord your God.
Tamim tiyeh im Adonai Elohecha. It's God and only God, and not all that rubbish, says Rambam. So Rambam is very clear. The only people that believe in this rubbish are feeble-minded people, women and children. Okay? Right. Now, what about the Ramban? What about the Ramban Nachmanides? Now, he was not quite so rational. Ramban was a bit more mystical in his thinking. Let's have a look at what the Ramban says. And he is speaking about this very section that we've got on the screen now, specifically the Ramban on this pasuk here. When you come to the land of the Lord your God is giving you, shall not learn to do like these, all abominations, all this stuff. Let's have a look what the Ramban says. Again, this is from Safaria. And he says like this. This is the Hebrew. Hopefully I can find you the English. There it is. There we go. He quotes the pasuk that we've just said, you shall not learn to do after the abominations of the nations. And then he goes on to say, he also prohibited them to consult the sorcerer or the necromancer who uses the goat, or in any manner to seek information from them. He mentioned the kosein ksamim, involves divining future events. This is future, what do they call them? Fortune tellers and all that stuff. And he goes on to say, he does not say that these things are not right. He says, but he does not say for those that do all these things, because Scripture, in calling the practitioner an abomination, refers to most, but not all of these practices. For the Monain, who divines observing the clouds, the Menachesh, who prophesies by means of the wings or chirping of the birds, are not abominable, and God did not dispossess the Canaanites on their account, because all human beings desire to know things that are going to come upon them. Everyone wants to know the future and to engage in what they consider to be pursuits of wisdom. And know now, he says, and understand concerning the subject of sorcery, that when the Creator, blessed be he, created everything from nothing, he made the higher powers to be guides for those below him. Thus he placed the earth and all the things that are thereon in the power of the stars and the constellations. So he is very clear. The Ramban is very clear that some of this stuff is real. Some of this magic stuff, this astrology, this this fortune telling and all that stuff is actually real. And he is of very completely the opposite opinion of the Rambam. The Rambam, the only thing that he agrees on the Rambam is that it's forbidden by the Torah. Rambam says it's all a load of nonsense, sheker v'chazav, it's deceit and lies. And the Ramban said it's clever stuff, but it's not for you, Jews. Okay, it's only for the Goyim. So anyway, that's yes, Jeffrey.
Puzzles me because at the very beginning it said that the people to be appointed to the Sanhedrin had to know about this, not practice it, but know about it. Now, the very fact that you're studying something, and it's a forbidden thing, to me, is a dangerous action.
It's even
Very
worse
good.
than that. It said they were masters of sorcery, which means they had to know how to do it, and they could do it.
Okay, very good. You have both raised the important issue of the Gemarah. So all of that stuff that we've just done was the background to understanding what on earth Rabbi Yochanan is talking about in our Gemarah. So let's go back to the Gemarah and see what he might be talking about. Okay, there we go. Back on the screen, the Gemarah is now. So let's go first of all, before we even get to Balei Kshafim, before we get to sorcery, we might not even get to that because we've got to get through the other ones first. First of all, why do you have to be tall to be a judge? Why can't you have a short judge?
I think it's to do with intimidation, that that the judge should not be intimidated by people in the court, and height gives you, which I'm aware of, height gives you the necessary elevation to ensure that you wouldn't be easily intimidated.
Very good, excellent, excellent. It's a double-edged sword, that, isn't it? Because you want to have a tall judge so that he's not intimidated by the tall defendant, okay, or the tall advocate on behalf of the defendant, if there is such a thing. But it also works the other way around, doesn't it? If he is tall, we don't necessarily want him to be intimidating, but we do want him to be imposing. Okay, people who have height, they are imposing. Now, I did a little bit of research on your behalf and found something very interesting. And that is this. I put into Google whether people who are tall and good looking, which is what the Gemarah wants our judges to be, I wanted to know whether there was any scientific evidence that tall and good-looking people are more successful than short, ugly ones. And guess what? They are. They are. There is good evidence that there's an article here which I found. Does physical attractiveness give you an advantage? And this is really quite interesting, this whole article. And you can have a look at it in your leisure. But it turns out that that tall people, particularly tall people, and particularly tall and good-looking people, have a very significant advantage in terms of power, in terms of success, in terms of financial success, in terms of earning power, in terms of how many interviews they get. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Now, I shall just tell you something. I'll just go back to the Gemarah now. Just tell me when you've got the Gemarah back on. I'm quite sure whether this will work. You got the Gemarah back on now? Yeah, okay. So it's very interesting. When you are, right, there's a guy in our shul called Alan Singer, okay, who some of you will know. How would you describe Alan Singer, Jeffrey?
I'd say he's very tall, statuesque, and he looks important.
Yeah. So Alan Singer is tall, he's good looking, he has snow white hair, which is immaculately coiffured. He's I think that most people would look at him and say that he is a tall, handsome man. You know what my kids call him? My kids call him the American president.
But he's Canadian.
I don't care what he is. They call him the American president because if they were casting a film, that is how you would cast the American president, because he is a man of power, a man of influence, and you expect your man of power and influence to be tall and good looking like Alan Singer. I'm going to have to send him the recording of this now, aren't I? So he sees it. But it's human nature, okay? So
it's the problem with Neil Kinnock when he was standing to be when he was head of the Labour Party in England. He was unelectable because of his appearance. He was balding, ginger-headed, and wore brown suits. And they have people in politics who airbrush in person the politicians to make them wear, and the same with Robin Cook, that he's well known.
And Michael Foot as well. Michael Foot was a scruffy, hairy, bearded, very unimpressive looking individual. But I mean, I'm not talking about his politics. He was recognized as having a massive intellect. But as you say, he was unelectable because it didn't look right. So this is at first glance, when I looked at this Gemarah, I was rather upset by this, because I thought, this isn't right, that, you know, that you have to be good looking and tall to be a judge. Surely it should go on this one here, Ba'alei Chochma. You should have, wisdom should be the important thing. But Julia's point about being imposing, not being intimidated by somebody else, is very important. And some of you may be familiar as well with another phenomenon, which is known, I don't know if this is an American thing as well, but it's certainly an English thing, something called small man syndrome. Anybody heard of that? Small man syndrome. Jeffrey, tell us what small man syndrome is.
It's someone really that's got an inferiority complex, but it's sort of reversed, and they come over as being arrogant and aggressive. Yeah.
And they're arrogant and aggressive because they're small. They're usually short and fat and ugly. They feel that because they're short and fat and ugly, they're not going to get on, which is true, because our research has said that. And so therefore they have to be pushy and aggressive, or they feel they have to be pushy and aggressive and arrogant. And you see it all over the place, small man syndrome. So the Gemarah, one sec, Jeff, the Gemarah here is telling us something which at first I thought was not right. Why should you have to be tall and good looking? Well, it's important because you have to respect your judges. If your judge looks like some kind of, you know, Quasimodo type cripple, then you're going to look, the people are not going to look up to the judge and treat them with the due respect that they should have. It's a sad reflection on society that is the case, but it seems that this has been the society forever, because when was the Gemarah written? The Gemarah was written 1500 years ago. So, you know, Ein Chadash Tachat Hashemesh, things don't change. Yes, Jeffrey?
So it's very interesting that the state of Israel has had quite a number of leaders who have all been of short stature and not entirely film star-like. I'm thinking of Ben Gurion and Menachem Begin and Shamir. These were little men, but they were powerful men.
Very interesting you should say that. It is interesting. And in fact, if you think about all of the leaders of Israel, certainly the early ones were short, stocky, and not particularly good looking. And that is because they came from Eastern Europe. And the Eastern European stature is that, isn't it? Short and stocky with broad foreheads. That's what they look like. And the other thing, of course, is that they came from poor backgrounds and they were malnourished. If you look at the Holocaust survivors, if you think about all the 45 group that we know in Manchester and other places, those that came over after the Holocaust, I don't think any of them were over 5'5", because their growth was stunted due to malnutrition when they were kids. Yes, that's very interesting, isn't it?
But conversely, when they came to Israel, the height of the Jews increased immeasurably, and there were all Jews were tended to be smally, whether they were undernourished or not, but when the Israeli Jews, the Sabras, have had height, and
they have had height and health. That's the thing. You think of the shtetl Jew as the weedy, the weedy little pale-skinned, unhealthy-looking kid with glasses like bottle tops, bottle glasses and all that kind of thing. And you think of the Israeli, the Sabra, the bronzed guy with rippling muscles, working the fields and everything. Well, the nutrition plays a massive part in this, as does philosophy as well. But it's interesting, isn't it, that the Rabbi Yochanan makes no bones about it. You have to look the part. That's what
high stature doesn't necessarily mean looks, does it? It just means important, etc. It depends on. I'm not sure of the exact translation, but high stature doesn't necessarily mean looks or height or anything like that. It just means you're somebody important in the community, so to speak.
Well, Baalei Koma means height. Height. Okay. And the one after Chochmah, Baalei Mareh, means appearance. So it is specific. It's height and good looking, tall and good looking. And in between those, you've got to be clever as well. Okay, Baalei Chochmah, you've got to be clever. And then we just about got time to go through this one. Oh, Baalei Zikna, you've got to be of a certain age, you've got to be a maturity. You can't be in the Sanhedrin, and I think until you're aged 40. Don't quote
There is
me on
one
that.
exception, isn't there? The head of the Sanhedrin, he wasn't 40.
How old was he?
22, 18. I think. Or was he 18?
He was 18. He was 18. And how old
looked
did
like he was 70. He looked
17.
like he was 70.
He was 17, I think.
Yeah, grey hair overnight.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hare
ani ven shivim shana. I'm like a man of 70 years old. Now that tells you something, doesn't it? That tells you exactly what this Gemarah is. Maybe this Gemarah is based on that.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? He was 17 years old, but he couldn't sit on the Sanhedrin because he wasn't somebody who was a zikna, so they made him look like he was old. He wasn't somebody who was tall and good looking, so they gave him a nice beard. Right, and they made him like an impressive guy. So he looked impressive. Exactly the point. Well done, Michael. That's exactly the point. We're all familiar with that story from the Haggadah. I was like a man of 70 years old. He was really only 18. I think he was. He became like 70-year-old man because looks are important. The Gemarah is telling us here that, like it or not, looks are important. And, current research tells you the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun. And we've got 5 minutes left. Let's just have a look at why somebody has to be a Baal Kshafim. Now, Jeffrey's argument was that that you shouldn't even be learning this stuff. Torah says you should stay away from it. So what are these judges doing? Learning this stuff and becoming masters of it. Baal means a master. They're master of it. Michael Krauss did a similar thing, said they have to know all about it. Well, why do they have to know all about it, do you think?
Well, they have to know all about it so they can identify it.
Okay. So, what's the expression? I have to say it I won't say it in the way my kids say it because it's a bit rude language, but I'll translate it into nicer language. You can't kid a kidder, right? You can't kid a kidder. Somebody who's full of,
he knows it already. But also, there's certain actions that are considered sorcery and some others that aren't, and they have to know whether what the guy did is actually sorcery or not.
Yeah. So the first thing is they've got to recognize when somebody's
there's a whole discussion, I think, somewhere in the Gemarah about what acts are actually sorcery.
Yeah, it is, and it's in the Hilchos Avodah Zorah, because the punishment for all of that is it's a serious punishment. So you've got to know what it is that you're not allowed to do. So that from that point of view, the judges have to know exactly what is sorcery. But here we're not talking about somebody necessarily judging a sorcery case. We're saying a person who is a judge on the Sanhedrin has to know all about these things, because he has to be able to recognize when somebody is trying it on. You can't kid a kidder, so you have to be a kidder, right? And you have to know, and you have to recognize all the tricks of the trade, okay? And you see this in cases that we see today, don't we? The judges will know all the tricks that the advocates will try. The advocates will say something in front of a jury which they know full well they're not allowed to say, and their opposite number will say, "Objection, my lord." And the judge will say, "Yes, you're quite right, Mr. So-and-so. Mr. So-and-so, please strike that from the record. Jury, you will not take any notice of what that last comment." Well, of course they're not going to take any notice. Of course they are. It's been said, and the advocate that said it knew it would be heard, knew he wasn't allowed to say it, knew it was a trick, knew he would be censured for it, but also knew that the jury would remember what he'd said. It's a trick that all lawyers, they're probably taught that on day one of law school, I would imagine. You're not a lawyer, are you, Art?
No, I'm afraid not.
Oh, okay. Julia's a lawyer, and Julia wouldn't dream of doing such a thing like that.
No, but it was interesting what happened with Donald Trump this week when he stood up and made speeches, and the judge told him that this wasn't the correct forum for doing that.
Yes, well, there you are. There you go. A kidder's got to know a kidder will know a kidder. So this is why apart from the fact that what Art said, which is absolutely true, if you're going to punish somebody for an offence, you have to know exactly what that offence is. So you've got to know exactly what is considered sorcery, what's considered all the other bits and things, soothsaying and necromancy, and there are very specific things. So they've got to know that, of course, because they're judging a case. But even if you're not judging that kind of case, you've got to be aware. A judge has to be aware of all the tricks that somebody might try, recognize those tricks, and be a battle of those tricks. You've got to know, you've got to be a master of those tricks, recognize them to be able to dismiss them.
So it's interesting that actually, so both Ramban and Ramban can be supported by this. Both of their points of view about sorcery are supported by this statement. You can say it's because Ramban's right, because you see, you have to know what they're doing, because you have to know when they're doing sorcery, and you can say Rambam is right because, see, you have to know when they're trying to teach you.
Right.
So they're both right.
Yeah, I don't think that this statement supports one or the other more. You can argue it both ways, as you say. You could argue you've got to be a Baal Kshafim to make sure that they don't try one on you and deceive you and lie to you. Or you could say you've got to know how to do this to overcome when they try their magic. Magic's real, says the Ramban. So you've got to be a Baal Kshafim in order to be able to, if you like, to be able to counteract their magic. You know, if you think of Harry Potter, you've got to be able to do a counter spell against with your magic. Okay.
You've got to break the law to actually uphold the law.
If you're a judge, yes, yeah, but that's true. Look at the police, right? The police have to if they are investigating a case of, let's say, child pornography, they actually have to view the child pornography, don't they? They have to know what the offence is. So yeah, you have to break the law in a way to investigate the law.
But you can't even become a judge until you've broken the law, it says.
Yeah, in a way, it's part of your law school.
You can't be a politician either.
Say that again, Art?
Can't be a politician either, but that's
also true. Yeah, they teach you in politician school as well. Okay, we're out of time, but let's just finish this little section because it's very obvious. V'yodim b'shivim lashon. You've got to know every language that there is. You've got to know 70 languages. Why? Why have you got to know all the languages? You get a translator if you don't know a language.
Says it
No.
right here.
Says the Gemara, no. Shalote Sanhedrin shomat mipi amaturgamin. The Sanhedrin cannot listen to evidence via a translator, an interpreter. Why?
For two reasons. One is you have to hear the witness, and two is you don't know if the translation is good.
Correct. The main reason, of course, is that what did I just call it? I called it an interpreter. You are, by definition, going to get the intermediary's interpretation of what the witness said, not necessarily what the witness said himself, with all the nuances that there is in language. And the Sanhedrin is the court of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were. And it has to be as close to emet as it possibly can be in a human form. Okay? And there is so much potential for distortion of the facts via an interpreter. I know that for myself, for a fact, because I used to write reports for people who've been injured in accidents for compensation, and we'd have people come in who were not English speakers, and they'd bring with them an interpreter who just happened to be the claims manager, whose interest it was to bump up the claim. And I know for a fact that they did not translate accurately what they'd been said, because there were certain languages that I understood and I pretended not to understand, and the interpreter did not interpret it faithfully. So when you have a court, a Sanhedrin, it's the nearest thing we can get to a holy court, and it has to be as emet as it possibly can be. And in order to get as emet as possibly, as Art says, number one, you have to hear the evidence from the mouth of the witness himself, and you have to understand the evidence from the witness himself, and not somebody else's interpretation of his evidence. So we have finished that little section today. In summary, a person who is cannot be part of a Sanhedrin unless he is tall and imposing and good looking. He has to be wise, he has to be mature, he has to know all the tricks of the trade, and he has to be a multilinguist. You had to be a very, very impressive person to be a part of the Sanhedrin. Any questions before we stop the recording?
That's why we can't have another Sanhedrin today, because there's no rabbi who would actually know 70 languages anyway.
Well, that is a practical point. Halavai, that was the only reason we couldn't have a Sanhedrin. The real reason we couldn't have a Sanhedrin is because we couldn't get 70 rabbis to agree on what day it is. Never mind anything else. So forget it. But yes, you're absolutely right. It's a tall order, isn't it? It's a tall order to be part of a Sanhedrin. That was Rabbi Yochanan's view. So we are going to learn next week, please God, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion in the name of Rav, and he makes a criterion which is even harder. If you don't want to be spoiled, then don't read on. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We will see you all next week, please God. Tonight is the Siyum that we spoke about earlier on. I will let you know on Sunday whether we're going to do Tanakh in person and on Zoom as well as a hybrid. I'm thinking about it, as I said earlier on. Okay, Shavua Tov, everybody.
Thanks, Johnny.
Safe and
Thank
well.
you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.